So you have a situation where we are being, I would say, taken for a ride. I think that's a polite way of saying it, because this is not rocket science, for God's sake.
Well, Dr. Teriba, let's take a look at broadly the policies that were actually, put forward by the CBN governor during his tenure. One of such policies actually revolved around the manufacturing, agriculture, small and medium enterprises. Were they adequate to allow them not only compete globally, but offer competitive local substitutes to minimize Nigerians' dependence on imports?
Right. You are talking of the special funds,
Yes.
loans made available to specific sectors. Well, I think that the bigger issue in the last 3 years, as far as monetary policy is concerned, is the tightening of monetary policy, is the tight monetary policy.
So even though they were giving them loans, the fact that they were tightening the policy was not even making it
150 billion
any
and you
interesting.
mopped up 1 trillion. If you gave 500 billion and you mopped up 2 trillion, net, the business community is worse off in terms of availability of credit,
funds.
the cost of credit, and access to credit. So I thought that in a post-crisis global economic environment, when most governments were providing liquidity support, not just to businesses but to households, to have embarked on such an aggressive tightening of policy, I thought was wrong, and it hurt real activity in the country. And the biggest reservation I have with the monetary policy process today is that there is no discussion at all of growth, of employment, of spending, either by household or by businesses. There's a complete marginalization of real economic activity from monetary policy discourse. The committee talks about banks, talks about the foreign exchange market, talks about budget, and stops there. And on that basis, tighten the more. So you need somebody who can look, who has a broader vision than banks and financial markets.
Okay, so when you say you
need
need
somebody who understands what the economy is.
Dr.
Banks
Teriba
are not the economy.
Dr. Teriba,
Financial
so
markets are not the economy.
who should Nigerians be hoping that will probably succeed? A banker, an economist, or an academic?
Well, I don't know the difference between an economist and an academic.
An
But
academic,
I do
like a
think
professor, like we had Professor Chukuma Soludo.
I think you need an economist. Somebody who has a broad enough vision to see beyond banking and financial issues. Because in the end, financial stability is only one of the 3 concepts of stability that we're concerned about. The biggest concept of stability is real output stability, growth stability, employment stability.
Well, Mr.
It is
BOYO,
all part of that.
Mr. BOYO, let me just bring your thoughts in on this one. Dr. Teriba has said we need an economist. But then there's this argument that we need an economist who has a banking background, like a chartered banker, for instance, to be able to successfully handle all the issues that will come up either from the financial services or from the economy, as the case may be. Do you share the same view?
I don't know whether it's worth pursuing the discussion, because the Central Bank Act 2007 precludes a non-banker from being central bank governor. So really, if you talk from here till tomorrow about whether you need an economist or an engineer, it doesn't change anything, because the Central Bank Act demands that the central bank governor must be somebody who's held senior positions in bank. But I tell you what, there's a danger in that. As we have discussed here, you have seen that the banks are the main beneficiary of the skewed, awkward, antisocial monetary framework that is currently in operation. Consequently, the banks are beneficiaries of a system where a government has said we are foolish enough to give you money and borrow it back. They are the beneficiaries of this type of thing. If you notice, the banks continue to make profit in spite of the fact that there was no real sector involvement. Who was supplying the banks with their profits? The government itself, by giving money to the banks and borrowing it back. If you have, therefore, somebody who has come or who has an antecedent in the banking industry, who has been a beneficiary of government borrowing his own, he's not going to stop that. He wouldn't be, he'll be shooting himself in the foot to do so. So we are in for a rough ride because the Constitution itself has already prescribed that you must have this kind of person, and this kind of person happens to be a major beneficiary of what is killing Nigerians. So the chances that you would get so-called, the chances that you would get a new central bank governor who's going to come and say, look, all Dr. Teriba has been saying, he can do it. Because why? It will work against the banking sector, where he comes from and where he has probably significant assets. So we are in for a rough ride.
Oh, well, let's just take a break on this one now. Let's catch our breath and we'll come back and continue this conversation. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. We'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. I still have here with me two gentlemen, two economists, Dr. Ayodele Teriba, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Economic Associates, and Henry BOYO, he's an economist. Please join us again.